This is a meeting of the Ways and Means Committee for Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. I'm your chair, Otis Wheeler. I'll call this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If anyone else present is doing the same, please notify me at this time. I don't see anyone. Councillor Bottomley, would you be so kind as to take the roll?
Definitely. So Councillor Wheeler.
Here.
Councillor Forgy.
Here.
I am Councillor Bottomley. I'm here. Councillor DeSorger.
Here.
Councillor Elmer.
Here.
Excellent. Everyone is present.
Thank you, Councillor Bottomley. We have a quorum. First item of business is approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of August 18, 2020?
So moved, Forgy.
Seconded, Elmer.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, they look great to me. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain? It passes unanimously. So we'll move on. We have no public hearings. We have one motion. I move that the sum of $21,000 be transferred from Fund 8402 Capital Stabilization to repair the boiler located at the DPW yard. Is there a second?
Second. DeSorger.
Seconded by Councillor DeSorger. Discussion. I'll start. This was something that I think needed work, and turned out it needed work sooner than later. But I think we have Director Warner on the line. Director Warner, would you like to give us a brief reminder of the situation here?
Yeah, sure thing. The brief summary you gave basically sums it up, but we expected to get 3 or 4 years out of our boiler before we put any significant money into it. In the next couple of years was going to be to upgrade our heating and hot water system in the yard to, let's say, today's efficiencies and whatnot. So we pulled the panels off about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and realized that it's a very old 1989 vintage boiler with 12 sections, and the gaskets were literally protruding out. It wasn't a great picture, but what we do know is we don't want to run into a very, if we run this thing, I don't want to run into an extensive repair in an emergency in the middle of the winter. We don't have faith from 3 different companies that this will go the season without disassembling and replacing the gaskets. So that's the brief summary on the boiler. As you know, a boiler, I think of old train engines, steam engines. So in the future, we do have to think about upgrading our system. But this repair, the early returns on the other, I will say on the other companies that looked at it, if we don't have to replace any sections between the gaskets that have eroded, then we'll save a little money. So we're hopeful that happens. For 1989, it's really not that old, although it's, it is 30 some odd years old, but that's the plan going forward, but we need to address this now. So.
Thank you, Director Warner. I can say, councilors, you have a picture of this in your packet. Doesn't look like 89. It looks like it's had a hard 30 years. Must have been running all the time, not getting enough sleep.
Well, it's a big building and doors are always opening all winter long. So that's why we got to work on the efficiency part of it. And definitely steam boiler is not the way to go in today's day, but we'll work on that.
Sounds good. But in the meantime, it's heating season. So I can see why the need to act on this. Any questions or comments from counselors?
I have one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Phil?
can't see everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Phil.
I just, needs to be asked, does it make sense to repair or to replace?
That's a good question, because to replace and to upgrade to today's standards and efficiency and whatnot, we're looking at an engineering study for the whole building. It's a very unique building. Or just to replace the boiler in kind, we were looking at over $200,000, and we still have a steam boiler and steam heat. So I think if we get 5 to 10 years out of this, hopefully with the repair, that gives us an opportunity to potentially design and piecemeal, if you will, a new system into place. Example is heat pumps in the office areas, so on and so forth, and do something different for the truck base. So that's kind of a tentative plan moving forward. But it did not seem to me very cost effective to spend $200,000 on a vintage. The rest of the system is 1989 throughout the whole building also, I guess. That's the way to put it.
Thank you.
Good question, Counselor Elmer. Quick question for Director Gilman. I presume we have $21,000 in capital stabilization. Does that just about drain that account?
Yes, it does.
Thought so. Oh, I see now. The balance is right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Leaves about a little over $600 left. All right. There we go. Any further discussion, counselors? And please, if you raise your hand and I don't call on you, interrupt or write your name in the chat, because I can only see part of the committee because we do have guests. Hearing none, all those in favor of a positive recommendation for the repair, to appropriate $21,000 to repair the DPW yard boiler, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Director Warner and
Thank you.
counselors. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have current status of the reevaluations of commercial and residential properties, and number of tax demand titles and tax demand letters and tax titles filed by the city. So this may be a somewhat broad discussion, but I want to welcome Director Kimberly Mew and Assessor Joseph Ruggieri to the discussion. I believe later on we will have Kelly Varner, but she'll be joining us a little bit late. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we put this agenda item out there at the request of a couple counselors, and it's really to have some questions answered to fill us in as counselors and Ways and Means Committee members to make sure we understand the job of assessing and where things are at. And so I know we've had some back and forth, some questions answered already through email, but I'm gonna put it out there now for counselors to ask your questions.
And I also just want to say before that happens, I have a whole bunch of questions that I got ahead of time, which I appreciate that I can answer. But go ahead with anything other than that before, if you'd like.
Great. I'll put it out to the subcommittee whether you'd like to ask your own questions first, or should we hand it over to Ms. Mew to ask some of the answer some of the questions that have already been submitted? Anyone? I'm seeing a nod there. Okay, so Kimberly, would you mind kind of just starting with some of the questions that were already submitted?
Sure, and please feel free to stop me. I have a whole bunch of them, so if anybody has questions based on those, please feel free to just talk over me for a minute so that I realize that you have another question. So the first question was, in January of 2018, the $30,000 was allotted to the by the town council for the valuation of commercial industrial properties and what progress has been made. So we're about 3/4 of the way through the commercial and industrial property inspections. Because of COVID, this has taken a little bit longer than expected, and it's also changed our direction as to how we were doing some of these inspections. The expectation was to be able to just walk in and out of any building that, well, assuming it was okay by the owner, that we needed to. That obviously got thrown with COVID. So it slowed us down in the sense of our inspector, who specializes in commercial and industrial properties, has been in town doing the best he can with drive-bys, with parking at buildings, and getting out and walking around the exterior. If he believes there's something, whether it's a permit that's been pulled that maybe something on the inside isn't, we need to take a look at it. It's maybe not updated. Or if there's just something about the property that he feels he'd like to go inside, we've been pulling those aside, attempting to contact those owners, as that comes about. And he's finding some really good things. He's actually finding that most of our data, our physical data, is accurate. What he is discovering, though, is that our cost tables need to be updated. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, what a cost table is basically the reconstruction cost of the building brand new, less the depreciation and other bits and pieces, if there's an odd layout of the building, or so on and so forth. So that's actually really good news, that the actual data is very accurate. And then the cost table is it's something that we should be updating regularly. And it looks as though it was neglected for one reason or another. So once that happens, we should see some shifts in our values.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from counselors on that aspect of things? And
Counselor,
again, I can't see everyone, so just go ahead.
Vice President Wheeler, may I speak?
Yes, Counselor Disorder, go ahead.
Thank you, Kim. So when you are saying that about the cost table, when do you think that change will be made?
We're hoping to have that done by the final tax bills this year. So that would be the bills that go out in December for February and May. There is a slight possibility, depending on, if we're able to get into these particular properties and if we can get this study done, that it may take a little bit longer. But we're really pushing to get that done for the final tax bills, because A, this project has been going on for a while, and B, it would be really nice to just get that revenue right away. So, we, like I said, pushing very hard for this to happen for the final tax bill.
And follow up?
Go ahead.
For the commercial properties, are you including in that properties that are commercial in the sense that they are the whole property is a rental?
Yes. Yep. Any type of commercial property, if it has a land use code of a 300, which is commercial, it's being looked at. Right now, currently, we're not looking specifically at parking lots, but that's going to be a follow-up to this. Just because it's vacant land, it's still important, but it's a little bit less likely that, we may, for example, have too many bathrooms or not enough bathrooms on a vacant piece of land like we could in a building. So we definitely will be looking at those as well, but all commercial properties should be looked at.
Thank you.
And Counselor Forgy.
Thank you. You said the inspector is doing the exterior or drive-by examination of properties. Is that inspector from Patriot Properties?
No, this is an inspector from RRG Regional Resource Group. His name is John Frank. And his specialty at Regional Resource Group is to specialize in commercial and industrial properties. So he is the person that if you have any trouble with your commercial industrial for any reason, if you have any questions, if you need to compare buildings, if you need, for example, if you have a building that's, you don't have anything else like it in your area, he can look at that building and say, okay, well, let me compare it to, Boston, but you have to know that Boston is going to have different values than us. So he's every little corner, nook and cranny that you need to know about commercial and industrial. John is your guy.
Is the Regional Resource Group through the FERCog?
No, they are the company who went out to bid with the previous mayor for this sorry, I'm at a loss of words. This was Mayflower was here before, and I believe Patriot Properties was the prior company that did the inspections, but we do still have Patriot Property for our database.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I could add one thing, Kim, John Frank was very helpful when we were working. Go ahead. Oh. When we were working with one of the properties that was a commercial restaurant around the Rotary, and it was very challenging to argue our value, but using the lease terms and the income approach, he was helpful in getting our value up to a fair amount of money, because certainly they're doing very well right there around the Rotary. And then on a personal note, John Frank did come into my real estate office, and I guess my grandfather Alphonse never let the assessors in the building, and it was determined that they did not, that my second floor was not finished according to the assessors, and it was corrected in it as it should have been. And so just from a personal point of view, I think RRG did a great job with this. And it's nice about RRG is we get John Frank for commercial stuff, but we have a separate person who works on personal property. And then we have a separate person, Jeff Reynolds, who kind of oversees it, who helps us to balance out, some of the unique situations. He helps us with what other towns or cities are doing. And I guess I just want to put a plug in. They've been very helpful to us over the last 2 years that we've had them.
Great, thanks for that.
I have a question.
Yeah, Councillor Elmer.
Can one of you put this in the ballpark? Can you give us a rough estimate of how much revenue we're not getting because the assessments aren't complete, and when that could be done, when that could be realized?
So unfortunately, I can't give you a ballpark figure because I didn't come with any reports or anything that to that nature. I'm not exactly sure if I can give you a ballpark figure until the actual calculations get updated. I apologize for that. However, like I said, we're hoping to be able to finish up those inspections shortly and have this whole thing done for the final tax bills. Absolute worst case scenario would be the preliminary bills next year, but we really, really, really are pushing to get it done for these final tax bills.
Follow up. I'm going to press you on that. Are we talking about thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars?
And again, I'm sorry, I can't give you that exact number because, like I said, I didn't pull any reports or anything specifically on that, but I can certainly follow up with RRG and see if I can get a more, an estimated number if you'd like that.
I would. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
And just as background for some of the newer councilors, this was an appropriation made, I think, 2 years ago. It was much lower than what was submitted. Council lowered the appropriation, as I recall. But of course, it's subject to timing as well. So maybe we did land on a decent number. Any more discussion before we let Ms. Mew go back to the questions? All right, I guess we will continue with the questions, please.
Okay, so next question was, what triggers an inquiry or an inspection and a revaluation of a property? So this is a very loaded question because there's a lot to this. There are multiple reasons that we might look at a property. So I've given you some examples, and again, please ask me if you have more questions. But the number one thing is that the state would like us to at least attempt to look at every single property in the city or town that you work for within a 10-year range. So it's not going to be, in 2020, we looked at these property, every single property in Greenfield. So in 2030, we're going to have to look at every single one again. But it's more of, okay, this percentage of town was looked at in 2020. So in 2030, by 2030, they need to be looked at again. So there's that, which is really, really important. And if we don't meet that, and that number actually specifically is a quarter of your town every 10 years. So if we don't meet that number, we get in trouble with the state. And I also mentioned that we have to attempt. The assessors are not required to be allowed to come into your property. So if we come to your house and say, hey, I'm from the assessor's office, I'd like to do an inspection of your property to see that you haven't had one in so many years, or you pulled a building permit, or so on and so forth, the homeowner can say no. And there's absolutely nothing that we can do about that. We cannot force our way in. We cannot peek through windows. We just have to say, okay, thank you for your time. Do you mind if I measure your property? If they say no, get off my property, we have to leave. So that's kind of all in the first thing, the most important thing. The other things are that would trigger us to go out and do an inspection or a reevaluation of a property is any type of building permit. There are, if someone comes in and asks questions about a property, this could be completely innocent. They could be looking to see, who the owner is because they just moved in next door. And maybe they tell us, they have a pool and we were hoping that our kids could swim. And we go, wait a minute, we don't have a pool. We would never say anything to that person, but that might trigger an inspection for us. That's just an example. It could be an inquiry of, something's going on next door. Can you help me, with whatever, a complaint of some sort. So some sort of a question about the property would trigger us to go out and look at it. Also the sales data. So this is a fully loaded option as well, because this is every year we do a sales analysis. So we're looking at every property, even though it hasn't sold in 50 years. So this could bring us to, oh, maybe there's something wrong with our capes because for some reason they seem to be valued really low. And then we look into it some more and we go, wait a minute, it's just this particular neighborhood. So the sales really bring us to look at a lot of different things in a lot of different angles. And the last thing specifically that I mentioned was, anything that might occur in that particular neighborhood. For example, we had mentioned putting the fireplace on Riddell Street. That would trigger us to go out and look at those houses and say, okay, how has this affected this neighborhood? How has this affected these particular houses? Has it affected the whole street, or is it just these particular ones that abut the property? So there's, that's just sort of a brief overview of some of the things. I mean, I could go on and on and on about what might trigger, an inspection, but those are really, big ones that stick out to me that might cause us to do an inspection of some sort.
Thank you. We're all going to be inspected, assessors. Do we have any follow-up questions from counselors? And again, either put it in the chat or just speak up, please.
Vice President Wheeler.
Counselor DeSorger, go ahead.
Where is it, from where do you get that sales information?
So we get copies of deeds every month for any sale that has occurred in the city of Greenfield. So this could be as simple as someone just putting their property in a trust. This could be as simple as transferring the property for $1 or no consideration to their children. This could be just a general sale from, Joe Schmo to Jane Smith. It could be anybody. So what we do is we enter those into our computer system, And then we pull a report at the end of every calendar year to do a report, to do a sales analysis on those. And along with those, we also send questionnaires to all the new homeowners, simple questions. Sometimes people call and they say, don't you know this information? But, sales price and things like that. Yes, we do know. But it could be something to the nature of, you paid $400,000 for a house that's valued at $350,000. And the reason you paid $400,000 was because it was your ancestor's house and it was very, very valuable to you. So we'd have to look at things like that. We also can look at the MLS listings to see if we can find something specifically on that property that maybe wouldn't come about in a sales questionnaire, or maybe the person doesn't return the sales questionnaire.
Great. Any other follow-ups? Hearing none, let's keep going.
Okay. Next question is, can we as counselors help you in any way to close the loop so that we don't miss any revaluations on new businesses or change of use? And first of all, I want to thank you very much for this offer. It's greatly appreciated. I think at this point in the game, this is a little bit more of a question that might be directed towards our inspections, but I will answer what I think. I think at this point, if someone is following all the rules, laws, and regulations of, opening a new business, putting an addition on, changing something in your house, adding a pool, so on and so forth, then we're going to pick this up. There is a time frame to it, but we will pick it up. Of course, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about those people that just don't want to follow the law. They're not going to follow. They're going to do things without permits. Every city in town has those people. And so I think at that point, we're out there. The building inspectors are out there. The health inspectors are out there. So we're all doing our best to try to, view every property as we're driving through town. I know in particularly, if I'm driving through Greenfield on the weekends, I tend to take note of things. Not that I'm trying to, work on the weekend, but if it's an area of town that I don't often go to, it might be just as simple as, oh, I recognize, now I know where I am. So I think, as city employees, that's sort of part of our job. But I also think that if people recognize that something isn't right, if a business opens and they are absolutely sure that no one has applied for a business certificate or building permits have not been pulled, maybe it's something that someone has done in their backyard and all of a sudden a sign shows up on their front yard. As counselors, I would say if you're comfortable asking them if they have a building permit, if not, then talk to the departments that this would apply to. Talk to myself, talk to building, talk to the clerk's office to find out if a permit has been pulled for a business or a business certificate. My apologies. And that way it will bring us to all of us working together. We should be able to pick up everything pretty quickly that way. And again, this is not to create an atmosphere of everybody tattling on everybody for everything that you're doing. This is just, for those who just don't want to follow, at some point you will receive a tax bill, whether it's, a sign added to your real estate, or whether it be, you do have more than $10,000 of personal property. And by that, I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with that, Greenfield has a $10,000 threshold. So if you have less than $10,000 worth of equipment, for example, we see a lot of hairdressers, we see a lot of photographers, they don't have $10,000 worth of equipment, so we don't tax them for the maybe $500 of equipment that they do have.
One thing, Kim, if I could interrupt you.
Sure.
One thing that we would love to be more in tune with are any TIFs that are approved. We've been playing catch up over the last couple years. which is okay. We're working with MJ Adams and her department, I believe, on having a list of TIFs. How many years are left? Are they following through with their requirements? And before we exempt their taxes based on this TIF, we certainly are, doing our due diligence to verify that they are meeting their end of the bargain. But we have played a little catch up on that. And I don't see it slipping through the cracks. I think things are pretty public and transparent right now. But that's just another item I believe that the assessor's office and the counselors and the mayor's office can really work closely on being on the same page.
Yep. Yeah, and also we do have a very close relationship with the building department as well as the city clerk's office. So one of the things that we get from the building department every month is a list of new permits that have been pulled. And one of the things that we get from the city clerk's office is at the beginning or at the end of the calendar year, we go over and ask for all new business certificates so that we can send them a form of list, which is to tell us what they have for personal property and let us know if this was a business certificate that they pulled and then changed their mind for one reason or another, or did they actually start up this business and they're actually running something. So that helps us significantly with picking up new businesses as well.
Thanks. Any questions from counselors on that line? Counselor Forgy?
Thank you. So I'm thinking that the question might have been more toward perhaps additional resources that you might need to get this issue attended to get more compliance. That may be one thing to think about when it comes to budget time, just mentioning it. I also wonder, for instance, with things that happen, like people go ahead and build a garage and don't report it. Tell me a little bit about the enforcement piece.
So the enforcement piece I can only briefly touch on because it's a little bit more of a building inspector question there, I believe.
Okay.
What I think needs to happen is, well, assuming you're doing things the way you should, you go over, you talk to the building inspector, you pull a permit, you draw out where you're going to put your garage so that they can make sure that you're not too close to the property line, you're not encroaching on your neighbors. Now, if this doesn't happen, and then they put the permit in and give it to us when we get our report from them, then we go out and do the inspections once we get all those. If that doesn't happen, it's not only hurting you because then you get, you may not realize that all of a sudden we've figured out that it's there and you're going to get walloped on your tax bill because you have this big, huge garage. You're hurting your neighbors, you're hurting your residents, you're hurting everyone in town because your value isn't accurate. And, people may roll their eyes and say like, that's ridiculous. But the more accurate your value, the more accurate the tax rate, the more accurate the exact amount of money that we need is going to be. So when this doesn't happen and we get notified by whomever, or we stumble upon this garage while we're doing an inspection somewhere else, the building inspector, I believe, and please don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they charge you a fee for, they'll ask you to pull the permit because you should have, and I believe there's an additional fee as in a fine, but please don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. And then it gets added to your assessment. But, going on that, again, if it's been 3 years, you've really hurt the whole city. And as silly as that may feel, hearing that about a single garage, you're not the only one that's doing, and I'm not saying you, Christina, I'm just saying you as in general.
I always quote permits.
So, you as this homeowner is not the only person. So, it's an effect.
Could I do a little follow-up piece with that too? one thing, can we get a list of TIFs and see who
Sure.
businesses they
Yeah.
are and what's going on? I would love to be able to see that. And then I have a broader question. Maybe I should have asked it before, but when you were talking about what the state wants in regard to assessing, which is in a 10-year range,
Mhm.
and you're saying that within that period, 25% of the property at each group
Mhm.
of property has to be assessed, or revaled or looked at or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is that 25% a cross-section of industrial, commercial,
Yes.
and housing?
Yes.
It's just not, we're going to do industrial this 25% and,
Right.
okay.
Right. It would be so wonderful if we could cut the town into 4 pieces and do it that way. But when they started this law, it was already, things were already being done in inspections. So if you had been to someone's house this year, you don't want to go back just to make that perfect cut in the city.
Got it.
So it would be wonderful if we could do something like that, or even to that nature where this year it's commercial, next year it's residential, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, it's just a mishmash of properties.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Counselor Disorder, do you have a question? No? Okay. All right, moving on.
All right. Next question is, are you currently following real estate listings and sales? So I had touched on the fact that our office does get a copy of the deeds for every property that has had some sort of a transaction every month. So we do follow in that sense. As for, am I following a live asking price on every property? No, because the asking price is not always a good indicator as to what the fair market value is, because, for example, with a single family home, it may be more sentimental to someone, so they put out an asking price of $400,000 when really the actual property is, and everyone's telling them it's really only worth 250,000, but go ahead and try. You are going to see, if you're following along, you are going to see that property is going to sit there for a while, and no one potentially will be interested, and the price may fall. But basically, we don't follow very closely that way, because until it's a done deal and the deed is recorded, it's not necessarily an indicator of the actual fair market value price. And even with that sale recorded and everything, it's still a possibility that that's not a fair market value. So we'd have to take that into consideration as well when we do our sales analysis. So we do have a coding system that we use in the computer to help us to see that as well.
Thank you. Any questions, follow-up questions on that piece?
I actually just wanted to follow up myself. Just
ahead.
looking back at my notes, the assessments are also based on a full calendar year. So if you see that a sale has happened for, I'll just keep using that $400,000 number because it's round and nice, and the value may be, 300,000, or the value may be on the other direction where it's 500,000. We will catch up with that. And this, unfortunately, is something that is regulated by the state. This is where every city and town in Massachusetts is sitting. So all of our assessments are, what we say is 18 months behind, because of the way that the final analysis has to be done on the full calendar year. So, it doesn't, these answers don't always sit well, and unfortunately, these are some of the things that we'd love to change, but we have to go through legislation and all that. So,
But just to clarify, the values for fiscal year 21 are based on the sales of calendar year
2019.
2019. Okay, so we can't use a sale in August of 2020. We're going based on last year's calendar year.
Yes. Yes, and along with those lines, there are situations where you have a very odd property that sells. There's a commercial property maybe that there's none. For example, a Walmart. Maybe there's no Walmarts in Western Massachusetts. So you have to try to figure out, okay, what can I look at to compare? Is this the correct value? And maybe there was a Target that sold, 2 weeks ago. So you do use that a little bit in a situation like that where it's very odd, but very rarely are you going to use sales that happened a week or two ago.
Thanks. Any other questions on that piece? Moving on.
Okay. So this one is, do you follow requests on next request? I follow the requests that either are directed towards my department or have somehow linked me into that. Now, by that I mean if someone puts in a request, they choose which department they believe is able to answer their questions. And then if that's not the correct department, then that department head or whoever's assigned to the next request from that department will change that. So I do follow my own. I do follow anything that I have been included in, but otherwise I do not follow the system itself.
Makes sense. Any questions, counselors? All right, not seeing any. We'll move on.
All right. Next question is, and I just want to clarify, there was an inquiry forwarded. It said about 39 High Street, but I believe it's 39 Highland Avenue. This was through the next request system. It was brought to my attention that I needed to look at this specific request. And so the question here is, are there any thoughts to improve assessments in this case? So this case was a realtor owned a property, purchased a property, and unfortunately, fortunately, this realtor did updates to this property. Unfortunately, this realtor did not pull a single permit. So when this property was listed, it specifically said in the next request that it was listed for $750,000. Which was significantly higher than our assessment. So this is a really unfortunate situation. And again, this is a little bit, I think that the inspections department can help me answer some of these questions too, because I think they actually are directed at both of us. But again, there are going to be those people out there that don't pull permits. There's no blame really to point in anyone's direction on this particular incident and in any others that may occur that are similar to this. But depending on the work done, the contractor generally pulls the permit if there is a contractor. In this case, I think that there was, but regardless of the fact, as a contractor, I would be quite uncomfortable to do the work without a permit, knowing that there isn't one. This is hard because, again, you don't want to, play games and have people constantly watching you and your neighbors constantly being like, oh, what are they doing? I need to tell the town. But that's a way to help things. Another way is, in a perfect scenario, every single office has the exact amount of staff that they need to be able to monitor things like this. When you're out driving around doing other work, if you notice that there's a ladder up at this house and looks like something's going on, you go back and you look at your system and you see if you have any permits pulled. Maybe I'm out doing an inspection and I see that and I go back and look at my system. I don't have anything, which maybe doesn't mean that there's not a permit pulled. Maybe it means that it's just not gotten to me yet. It's not down the line. So I talked to the building inspector and I found out, yep, there's a permit, just hasn't gotten to me yet. Perfect. That's a perfect scenario, but unfortunately, this is something that does happen. This was quite extreme.
So sorry to interrupt. We're talking about 39 Highland Avenue.
Yes.
It was purchased by somebody for $250. She cleaned it up and then sold it for $465. Is that the property we're talking about?
I believe that is the property. In the meantime, I think there was all of this that was going on.
So what's the question, I guess I'm wondering?
The question is, what can we do to improve things like this from happening? And I think, the next request, someone had asked, what about taxes? Well, yes, this does get picked up eventually. And what about back taxes for this? And unfortunately, that's one of those things that
I see, because the assessed value, so she purchased it for $250 in 2017. The current assessed value is $256,800. So we were assessing it higher than what she paid for it. And then she must have cleaned it up, and obviously now it's $465. Now that's going to change the price per square foot, the price per bedroom, the price per bathrooms in the whole region there for that class of houses. So that does catch up to the system. But again, that sale happened in June of 2020, and we'll be able to enjoy the fruits of that in fiscal year 2022.
Right. So I think where Joe is going, as well as myself, is, it does catch up. It just unfortunately, it takes a while, and there's not, from our side of things at this moment, there isn't a way to fix that. I think, like I said, in a perfect world where everybody has money that they need and they have all the employees that they need, things like this may not happen as much, but it happens in every city and town. So, this is an answer that I would love to be able to be giving you a better answer. But unfortunately, this is sort of where we're at right now.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I just wanted to jump in and say, from a compliance standpoint, I would agree that probably staffing in building departments is in at least some way relevant to this, and that Building Inspector Mark Snow has requested a third inspector, yearly, for years. And it's either not filled or it's cut by the council. So that's just something to keep in mind, when budgets come around. Any follow-up questions from councilors?
I have to excuse myself. I'm sorry. I trust Kim can do this well, and I apologize. I have a meeting at 6:20.
That's
Thank
all
you,
right.
everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Regari.
Thank you.
See you next time. Councilor DeSorger.
I have a follow-up on that. I certainly can understand that we're not going to capture that in this fiscal year, but I actually have been calling, predated your being there, Kim, but there have been sales in that area that are double the price of the assessment for the past several years. I'm just actually going to kind of zero in on Grinnell Street, Highland Avenue. I've maybe 5 or 6 years ago mentioned ones that have gone for $450, and the assessments are not coming up. The reason that I'm bringing it up at this time is I feel that we can't afford not to capture that revenue. This one, I see nobody did the permits on, and it went for a lot more than it was worth. But just driving up and down that street and looking at the sales, which I do, or following them on the internet, we're missing a lot of revenue there. We have ones that are selling for twice what they are, and they have been for the past 4 or 5 years. I know that you only have the staff that you have, but I think we've talked about that before. That's one particular part of town that I just see that it's not consistent with the sales.
Mm-hmm. So I just wrote myself a note too, so that I can look at those and speak with RRG, so we can maybe do some extra inspections there. I know when I very first came on, we had talked about Grinnell Street specifically, and we wanted to do a better analysis there. And I think that the way I think things are supposed to run, the way that this is, they teach you at school, is when you do your sales analysis, you have to look at every little thing that you could possibly imagine. You have to break your sales analysis down to neighborhood, to type of house. So it could be like the Victorian versus the Tate versus, so on and so forth. And if you're finding something that is, it fits in the range, the 10% that the state gives you, but it's a little bit on the low side. Yes, it fits, but you still want to be closer to the middle of. So the state gives you this 10% range where you can be 10% higher or 10% lower than the fair market value. The goal is to be as close to the fair market value as possible. So if you have a house that's on the lower side, why? Is it because maybe it's run down? Okay, that makes sense. But is there no reason? Like, are you not seeing anything that jumps out at you when you do the inspection? Are you not seeing anything that jumps out to keep it down there? Then you need to go into your system and you need to make those adjustments. So, again, I'm not sure how things were done in the past, but this is the intention and this is how things are run now. I know we had mentioned that looking at that specific neighborhood in the past. So, I've written myself a note to speak with our RG about that as well and see what we can do about that particular neighborhood. And if there is an issue with values there, then we need to fix that.
Well, just to my way of thinking, it certainly appears that there is. I know someone in that neighborhood who'd been to the appellate tax board and made out okay. And we need all of that revenue. So thank you. Onward.
Councilor Forgy.
Thank you. Kim, tell me how the data is collected from when you are taking note of a property. Is it going into your handheld device? And then is it being uploaded into a database? Or is this information being transferred by hand?
So it is being transferred by hand. Unfortunately, the way that the Patriot Properties system works doesn't allow us to have a handheld. And I don't know if it's just the way their software system is set up or what the reason behind that is. But we are working on different ways to maybe be able to bring a laptop with us to these inspections. However, there's a little snag with the state and they want us to keep all these records that we handwrite forever. So it might become a thing where we dually, maybe we have our laptop with us, but we also have that printed record card. So if for whatever reason we're going out to look at a property right now, we print out the record card, we'll take a look at it before we go just so we have a heads up of what we're looking at. We'll take our pencil and we'll go out there, or our pen, and we go out there and we'll do the inspection based on what we've got there and any notes that need to be written, maybe there's a deck that's added, so we just add the dimensions onto the sketch. And when we come back into the office, we enter those by hand into the computer system.
Do you have a follow-up, please, if I may? Do you have any office staff?
I'm there full time, and I do have a part-time administrative assistant. She doesn't do any of the inspection things. So basically, it's myself and RRG that do the data input and the inspections.
Do the elected assessors go out into the field and do reviews of property?
In some cities and towns, they do. In Greenfield, they do not. I don't know if this was something that was specifically set up this way back when and has not changed just due to habit, or if there's, why that was done in Greenfield the way it was done. I think that many of the very small towns, Buckland, Shelburne, Leverett, Tewksbury, they have their assessors a little bit more active just because they don't have a full-time person, or they don't have multiple employees, or so on and so forth. So their board is a little bit more, I don't want to say active, but they're more in the field and doing things like that. So I'm thinking that that's more so along the lines of why it is set up the way it is, because I know at some point way before my time, there were multiple people in the assessor's office. So
Yes, there were. Mhm. Yep.
Counselor DeSorger?
So I have another question on the process of this. If you gathered information and had concern about whether or not the valuation of a certain property should be changed, would you bring that? Do you make that decision yourself, or do you bring that before whom? And who actually makes the decision? Like in the case that we talked about, I know that one would probably be 2 years from now, or a year from now that you'd be looking at. But that one in particular, that Highland Park one, we'll just use for an example.
sure. So just
How do
before I get into that too, I just want to clarify. Now, this has been brought to our attention now, so this is a property that we'll be looking at now. Had nobody, had we not known about it, yes, then it would have reflected the in the 2021 data. But this is, this was something that was brought forward. We need to look at it. It will be looked at now. So I just want to clarify that as well. But what would happen is, if there's an adjustment that needs to be made that's very strange, it might be brought to the board's attention and say, we've found this, we want to make this change because we believe that this is accurate. We could get a vote on it. Generally speaking, it's the inspector and assessor who would make that determination. So if you're going out to a property that has a permit for a deck, and when you get there, you find out they have a permit for a deck, they've built the deck, but they're home and they allow you to do an inspection on the inside of the home, and you find out that the entire inside of the home was remodeled since the last inspection, which was maybe 10, 15 years ago. So you have the ability to, you as the inspector have the ability to mark all this down on the record card. And when that is brought back to my office, you have if it's RRG that does the inspection, you have a contract with the city and you need to be honest. So I believe you when you come back with this information. Now, if it's me that goes out and does the inspection and I find the same data, then if I'm not specifically entering that record, whoever enters that record would believe me. If there's something very odd and they need to ask about it, then we would certainly talk to each other. But in a short, basically, whoever does the inspection makes that determination, unless it's something extremely out of the ordinary and we feel that we would need to talk to the board about it.
Okay.
Follow up if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Ginny.
And if you brought something to the board's attention, are you then a voting member, or do you let what I really wanted to know was
who votes?
Actually makes the determination?
So as the chief assessor, you are a member of the board, so you do have the right to vote. I tend to like to bring the information to them, give them the data, and I tend to sort of remove myself. I will, on the final vote. If I don't agree with the vote that they've made, I will make that clear so that in the notes for the board meeting, it will say that I have voted no, or it won't say a unanimous vote. But just because I'm the one that's handling all the data that I'm bringing to them, I like to remove myself as much as possible from the actual final decision. There hasn't ever really been a situation where 2 board members have overrode the chief assessor that I have seen, and there hasn't really been a situation where a board member and the chief assessor override another board member, again, that I have been a part of. But it's certainly a possibility that it could go in any of those directions.
Okay, and Councillor Forgy, did you have a question?
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, right. All right.
May I follow up with one more on?
Oh, yeah, Councillor DeSorger.
May I follow up with one more on that line? Do you do that same process if someone asks you for an abatement? As far as the voting part goes, so you've gotten your request and you go into the meeting with, that would be probably, would it be Mr. Reynolds?
He will come if it's an odd situation or if there's some explaining that needs to be done, if he was the person that did the inspection, but generally it's myself
Yourself and the
and the
two
board.
and the two elected officials, and
Yes.
they would be voting, and you generally wait and let them make the choice.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, back to our questions, I guess.
Right. Next question is, when a downtown property is divided into condos, specifically 377 Main Street, do you think it has an impact on the value of the property? So this is fully dependent on the way the market is running at the moment. In a rising market, that is going to potentially be a more valuable property because you might have your leases and your income and expense. You might have someone who purchases a bunch of the condos and maybe they combine them, maybe they, use each individual one. But in a declining market, this could be a negative impact on the building because it's a possibility that maybe there's 5 condos and 4 of them are vacant because no one can lease them because of a decline in whatever reason. So this is sort of, unfortunately, not a straight answer that I could give you, but sort of depending on where we are in the market situation as to whether or not it would be beneficial for condos or just a single use building.
Any follow-up questions on that, counselors? All right, not seeing any.
All right, moving along. Do you have any concerns about multiple sales and transfers between LLCs that are actually either the same entity or related? And again, this kind of goes back to my explanation about how we do our sales analysis. So to get a little bit deeper into that, you guys really are going to be assessors by the time I'm done with this. But when we do our sales analysis, when we're entering our deeds, we're putting codes on properties that we believe might not be what's considered an arm's length sale. And an arm's length sale is a fair and equitable sale. So an arm's length sale would be something that is 2 people that don't know each other that transfer a property. For example, if I put my house in my son's name, that's not an arm's length sale. And generally, you'll be able to tell on the deeds, when that's happening. So we usually can code them out. There are codes, for example, for properties that have sold. There's multiple properties, and you see that a lot in the commercial and industrial world, where someone may have purchased a property in Greenfield, Montague, and Northampton, for example. So you'll see this enormous number, but it's because they're buying 3 properties. They're not all in Greenfield, but there's 3 properties involved in the sale. So when we're doing our report, we look for those specific codes, and we look to see why that is coded. If it's not an arm's length sale, we don't look specifically at those sales. So when it comes to an LLC that might be transferring for a lesser amount of money, essentially, no, it doesn't matter to me because, I'm not going to look at that specific sale when valuing that property. If there's something further going on and it's been brought to my attention, then, I can take a look at it. But generally speaking, no, the sales of the LLCs would just be, if it's something that's not arm's length, that would be coded out of our sales analysis.
Thank you. That's a good answer. Any questions from counselors on that piece? Counselor DeSorger?
So if we don't have any responsibility as a city for anybody's use of anything, if indeed they were using something for purposes of tax evasion, we don't have any. We just have to look at what is. We don't really look at their business practices. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, we could, if we think something like that's going on, we could probably contact the state, but it's really not our job to keep track of things like that.
Yeah, Counselor Disorder, there's a division of municipal affairs in the Attorney General's office that I would assume would handle issues like that. Any, Counselor Forgy?
Thank you. Kim, when you say that those sales are coded out of the sale numbers or sales assessments, can you explain what that means?
Sure. So like I said, with for example, the sale, if I put my house in my husband or my son's name, and we did a transaction for $1 or for no consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So the specific code that I would use for that one is an A, which means it's a family sale, specifically going from one person to another. Sometimes we don't know if it's a family and there's a code. It's the letter F as in Frank, and it's used for a convenience. So that could be like if someone's putting their house in a trust,
Mm-hmm.
or if they're transferring. You'll see a lot of times parents transfer their children and things like that.
Right.
Or a divorce and somebody's name is being taken off the property, so on and so forth. So we put that letter on there. So when we run our sales analysis, we run it in multiple ways. So we run an Excel sheet that will tell us specifically this property has this letter, this has, this sale occurred and there's no code on this property. So we're assuming that this is an arm's length sale. But we also run it, or we can run it if we think something's a little funky, in a scatter graph. So when you look at all these dots on the page and you see a dot that's way up at the top, or vice versa, you see a dot that's way down at the bottom, and those sales are not matching in with all the others, you're going to take a look at that one and say, okay, that one has, that was sold for no consideration, so that's why it's way down at the bottom. There was no sale number. There was no money associated with that property. So if we used that value, it would throw it way down there at the bottom. And just a little fun fact, way back when, assessors used to assess property based on the sale price, but they weren't making any revenue from all these people that were transferring property from their family members. So they changed that. So that's sort of how when we say we code them out, it just means that for some reason or another, we don't believe that it was a fair and equitable sale.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. And I think we'll move on.
Okay. Question is, do you have any concerns about the disparities in your assessments of downtown commercial and industrial assessments? And I thought hard about this question because I do think there are some values that seem off, low. Maybe some look like they might be higher than others, like way higher than others. And I think that right now, this is a tough question for me to answer because I think after our commercial and industrial revaluation is complete and our cost tables are updated, we should be right in line with the fair and equitable, consistent market value. And I certainly don't want to be pointing any fingers at anybody because that's not my intention right now. What I think happens sometimes is over the years, things just sort of get overlooked, whether it's done on purpose or not, that I can't say. But with this particular study, I think that should completely put Main Street, our downtown area, back in the fair and equitable and consistent market value if it is out of line. And it could be one of those things where, the owner for some reason won't let us in. If it's not a storefront, if it's a specific office, that might be why it might be a little off because we can't get inside. So we have to make our best guess as to what we can see and what we do know about the property. So, yes, I do think that, it's a bit off right now. Am I concerned about it at the moment? Slightly, but I think it should fix itself with this revaluation once this is completed.
Thanks. Any follow-up questions? Counselor
When I'm particularly when I'm talking about the downtown, Federal, Chapman, etc. When that's done, will we be able to see that? I do have concerns about that. I'm just saying that for what it's worth. It's not easy to talk about, but I have definite concerns about that. And I think that there are some that need to be brought up.
Mhm.
So when you're finished with that, will that be something that will be shared with council?
We can certainly share that with council. All of our data is public knowledge I shouldn't say all, there is some stuff that's, exemptions and things like that are not public, but um, all the data as for the valuing is public, so we can certainly, we have a report that we can run that will show previous values to current. So we can do something like that. We can pick specific streets. I'm not quite sure if we can only pick specific parts of the streets, but I know for sure you can choose, the whole main street or all of Federal Street. So certainly something that we can share. And then again, along the lines of, I hear your concerns. If something still isn't falling in line the way it needs to be, certainly that, we can go back out, either take a look more specifically at that property. Maybe that was one that had an exterior inspection that needed an interior inspection, or, maybe there's something else going on, and certainly we can look at that and hopefully get that back in line.
Councillor Elmer. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor.
You've mentioned that people aren't required to let you in. Is that state law, city law, the Bill of Rights? Is it like, this isn't illegal search and seizure? The inspector should have a right to look at a property. So why is it that you can't?
So it is, there are multiple things. It's not just the city of Greenfield law. That is something that comes with the legislature. That is something, it's your, your Bill of Rights. It's basically if any person comes to your door and says, I'd like to come in, you have the right to tell them no. It's a tough one because you would think that being the specific job, that it almost would be a requirement that if we asked to come in that you let us. But it is, it's, I guess the assessing world hasn't figured out how to sneak past that requirement of, this is your home and you can let in and let out who you'd like.
Well, you could, if you get a court order, you can get in. I can see why it wouldn't be, that doesn't scale very well if you have to get a court order for every house in Greenfield.
No.
I understand that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And there has been, from stories that I've heard, there has been a particular property in Greenfield that had a court order through the building inspector for other reasons of safety, I think, and possibly the health department, where in that case, if they are allowed to go in and we could sort of tag team and go with them, we could certainly do that. But we also don't want to, piggyback and get in trouble for that as well. So, we do our best to try to get it into every property, but it is one of those things where the assessing world needs to work a little harder to figure out how we can do that. So.
Thanks. Anyone else? No, seeing none. We'll go on to the next.
Okay. Next question is, in your opinion, are we valuing land in a consistent manner? And I do believe that land specifically is being valued in a consistent manner. In every city and town, you will find that there are some discrepancies that are fairly normal. For example, some of the things that have been brought to my attention since I've been chief assessor is there's a couple of pieces of parcels, specifically the ones that I know about were out in like the farm country where they were listed as unbuildable, but actually currently they are buildable lots. And this could be just something like building and zoning codes changed. Maybe something didn't have the proper frontage way back when you had to have 4 miles of frontage, and now you only have to have 2. This could be something where a piece of land was split off and maybe the neighboring lot has ledge, but this particular one doesn't. And way back when it was created, it just, for some reason, the ledge never came off. So that's a fairly normal thing that happens throughout the assessing world. So, land specifically, I absolutely think that, we're doing the best we can and being as consistent as possible based on sales, based on, do they fit these codes? Checking in with the building inspector, with the planning department. And if someone tries to pull a permit for, to build on a lot that they find that we have as not buildable, that would be the route that we take, is to talk to the planning department and find out, are our records needing to be updated based on probably codes and things like that. So.
Okay, I have a question about that. So just for my understanding, there's the consideration, is it a buildable lot? And then it's part of a formula, is that right? And is the formula based, it's obviously based around sales prices. Is it based around the neighborhood, the sales prices in the neighborhood? Does that get plugged into your software?
Actually, the next question is sort of along those lines, so I can jump and answer that as well. I'll just read the next question too, so that it ties in. And the next question is, do we have a consistent value for land in some areas? Obviously, knowing that chapter land is valued differently. And then actually the following question is there a standard formula for land value with a house or buildings? And if not, why? So those three things kind of tie in together. I think the land is kind of, it's easy, but it's difficult. It's easy because there's nothing on it. There's no buildings on it. So, it's basically based on the sale price. And again, it's a sale price of an arm's length sale. So it's not just transferring a piece of your lot to the neighbor. This is a building lot or a non-building lot that's been posted for sale, and someone purchases it that doesn't know the owner. And so it's based on the neighborhoods. It's based on factors of geography. It's based on the appeal of the specific spot of the land, the most probable use of the piece of land. So, the most probable use is maybe we're talking about that specific land on the Mohawk Trail right next to McDonald's. The most probable use for that particular piece of property is not going to be a single family. It's a very, very commercial area. So that particular thing would weigh into valuing that property as, okay, well, that's a more valuable piece of property because you can make a lot of money off of that. So along those lines, Councilor Wheeler, I think that's answering your question, but please, let me know if that's not. And then as for, is there a standard formula? Is there like a, algebra formula? No, there's not. And I say no, there's not a formula. However, there's a process that we follow. And so what we do is we have to perform a market and land residual analysis. So market analysis I've kind of explained with the other properties, with the code. Is it an arm's length sale? Things to that nature. And then a land residual analysis is based on if there's a building on the property. So if we're looking just one over at the McDonald's property, we would, take, basically what we would do in a nutshell is take off the utilities. So take off the buildings, take off the pavement, take off the signs, things like that, to try to figure out the value, and then take into consideration where the property is, what is the, geography, what is, so on and so forth. So there is a process that we follow to do that. And the reason that there isn't a specific formula is just because the improvements vary so much on each of these properties, as well as the land utility. So the shape of the land, the amount of acres, the geography part of it, where, is it rocky? Is it wet? Is it, totally flat and beautiful field? So there is a process that we follow. So if you're looking to say, is that a formula? Sure, that could be considered a formula. But is there a specific, this number goes here, this number goes here, take that A out, put that number there? No, there's not. So I hope that is helpful. I know that's a lot of information, so I hope that's helpful, and please let me know if you need me to clarify.
No, that's a great answer. Very, really covered all the bases. Appreciate it. Any questions from counselors around any of that? I had one follow-up to something you mentioned earlier, which was parking lots. Are those taxed as part of, say, McDonald's parking lot there on the trail, because you were just talking about it? Is the lot just taxed as part of the land on that parcel? If it were separate, if it were a separate owner owning a parking lot that, it must be adjacent to business, is that taxed as vacant land or commercial? How do you deal with that?
So in the sense of McDonald's, it's taxed right along with the rest of the land because it's on the same lot as the actual building. And so something that I find a little bit crazy, but this is the assessing world, we tax for the pavement. So you will see that if there's a vacant lot, looking downtown, there's some behind the Greenfields Market, there is some parking lots. There's some that are city owned and some that are not. But those, if they're not city owned, they would still have a 300 code, which means they're commercial. So they're taxed as commercial properties. So they're valuable because they could potentially, if a building was put on them, they could potentially make quite a bit of money. So the fence is valued, the pavement is valued, but the code, the land use code, is actually specifically for a parking lot. So there is a different code for that. So we do look at them as, in a sense, yes, it's vacant, but it's not because it's being used as a parking lot. So there's a little bit more that goes into that. And so that's why I mentioned before that we were doing those separately in the commercial and industrial reval, because those, they're not as labor intensive because they're much easier to look at because you just park in it and there you are. So those should be, a much quicker process to get through those. So, but yeah, there's a lot, it's a lot different when, if for example, if the McDonald's parking lot was owned by someone else, that would be taxed specifically as a parking lot, and it would be, not necessarily looked at as a unbuildable or buildable piece of land, but as a usable piece of land.
Got it. I think I've got it. Thanks. Any other questions around any of that, counselors?
I do.
Your video is freezing up for me, so go ahead, Counselor Disorder.
So on Main Street, if we have two parking lots and one is one's 0.4 acres and it's $131,000, and the one across the street is twice as large as that, you'd expect that would be that the price would be consistently double, would you not?
I would say in most cases, absolutely. If it's the same flat terrain, they're both accessible. If there's a scenario where one of them is landlocked and the other one is not, but the only way to get to it is to pass over someone's land, that would significantly decrease the value in the property. If they are both, if they both stay in line together, everything matches up, everything is the same. Maybe one of them is shaped a bit differently than the other. That might make a small, small difference. But for the most part, they should fall in line together. Yes.
Okay. That wasn't quite what I saw as far as a couple of the parking lots, just for FYI.
Yes, and that has been brought to my attention, and that is, again, one of those things that hopefully, with the commercial industrial reval on the parking lot specifically, will, whatever happened there, and maybe it's not something, maybe there is something that's causing that to happen that I just don't see on the surface. Maybe it's something that needs some research as to why that's going on, but Whatever that is, if there is something incorrect, that should be fixed with that commercial reval.
So in it, not as a criticism, but in an effort to make, to obtain more revenue for our city. On Deerfield Street, which a lot of Deerfield, and you're all doing the best that you can to get to places when you can, but some of those have not been done for a while. Okay, there are places that will have 0.12 of land and another piece of property. I think I might have called that to your attention.
I think you did.
Okay, that it appears that that particular property has not been looked at for quite a long time, and it has over 3 acres of land, and that would be another source of revenue that we could tap into. So I'm just saying that out loud in a public forum.
And just to understand and to back Ginny up, you know, if something doesn't seem accurate to the eye, please let me know. You know, if you see something, I'm not taking any you know, criticism as a bad thing. This is good. I mean, if someone sees something in general that they think could help the city, absolutely talk to that department. You know, and there may be more to it than just the eye can see. So, you know, although we may think that there isn't something quite accurate, we may do some research and go, oh, well, there's a big sinkhole in the middle of that property that you just don't see. That's why, you know. So, you know, certainly to anyone that's listening, don't feel that you're paddling on anyone if you feel like something isn't right. You know, just, or if you just want clarification, it's not that you feel that something isn't right. Please, you know, feel free. My door is always open, and now my email or my phone is always open. So the way the world works, however you need to contact me, I'm certainly, you know, willing to at least do some research for you and find out what might be happening.
Thanks, Kim. That's great. That's a great takeaway, I think, from this meeting in general, is that we as counselors or citizens can reach out to your office.
Yes, feel free.
Yeah. All right. Did we get through all of our questions?
I have 2 fairly simple questions left. One is a yes or no question. We'll go with that one first. That question was not specifically in this pile of questions, but I saw it asked of, I think, the collector's office. And that question was, is CSO tax exempt? And yes, CSO is tax exempt. The process to get there is you have to file paperwork with the state. I also just did a little bit of research too, because I think I know specifically what that question was regarding. And so if a taxable entity is renting a property to a non-taxable entity, it is still taxable. So for example, the post office, if the post office is renting their building, they still have to pay the tax, or not necessarily them, but whoever the owner is still has to pay the tax on the building. There is some sticky situations where it goes, okay, the lessee then rents to the property and so on and so forth. But to get exempt as a company, you have to go through the state. You have to file certain paperwork with them. You have to meet requirements. And then with the city or town that you're in, your business is in, you have to file what's called a 3ABC every year with the assessor's office, which requires you to file a specific application saying that you are exempt. And then in many cases, assessor's offices will make you supply the exact same paperwork over and over and over again, just showing that you're exempt. You will see if you come to my office, I have a stack about this high just from the hospital. And then there's a stack right next to it, more from the hospital. So, you know, in a case like that, we don't always require that they fill out every single little piece of paper. If it's something that's been, like the hospital, they've been there forever. But we do require that they fill out the application and that they give us at least their certificate. It's called an ST2, which shows that the state has approved them to be exempt. So CSO, yes, they are exempt.
Great, thanks for that.
Ma-
Question from Councilor DeSorger?
I'm going to follow up, not really on that one, but it just reminded me of our dear 401 Liberty. That's a lease agreement. And part of it is being leased to something that is tax exempt. They every year have gotten an abatement, I think for the last 3 years, roughly around $40,000. And I know this one is complicated because they divided it into 2 or 3. But are they paying taxes on anything that we are not giving back to them?
Yes. So the piece of the building that looks like the lollipop, it's around, I believe the Lunt Silversmith used to have their actual shop there.
Mhm.
That is owned by 401 Liberty Street LLC, and they pay taxes on that portion of the property. The reason the exemption or the abatement happened you said it was 3 years in a row, was there was quite a bit of confusion with what exactly was happening with the rest of the property. The rest of the property should have been on one record card. And after getting sort of thrown into this, I found that it seems as though there was a misunderstanding somewhere along the lines, and a third record card was created, which was we were sending a tax bill to 401 Liberty Street being as the lessee, which we can't do. There is a lease agreement through the mayor's office that was created back then, that they pay monthly rent. As for the figures, I'm not aware of what they are, because that's through the mayor's office. But we were double dipping. We were sending them a tax bill as well as collecting their rent. So the abatement was processed. I think part of the reason that it happened for 3 years was because I totally misunderstood that they weren't supposed to be getting a tax bill, because I was so new into everything. And so what they were doing is they knew that if they did not pay the tax bill, they had no means to dispute at the appellate tax board. So that's why they kept paying the bill, because they wanted to have it straightened out. And then I was able to finally wrap my head around all the little bits and pieces to that building. And we figured out that the portion of the building that looks like the lollipop is owned by 401 Liberty Street, has never been in possession of the city of Greenfield, and the rest of the buildings that are on the property belong to the city currently. The plan is to eventually sell that to 401 Liberty Street. And part of the reason that it has been held up for so long is because there was a study that needed to be done throughout each season on the Maori building, which had something to do with the contamination that was happening there. And so the city agreed to keep possession of the building until that report was completed. So that's pushed back the sale date, I think, a couple of times. So as for where we are exactly right now, I think probably MJ could give us some more information on that. But that's basically the quick and easy where that property is at.
Okay. And do we know if that lollipop shaped one is Unit A or Unit C?
That is Unit A.
Okay. So they should actually be paying taxes on Unit A that we do not give them back.
Correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to duck out of the way. My computer's about to die.
Well, okay. We're almost done here.
Yes. I have one last question that was asked of me, and that question is, have you noticed any pattern of higher or lower assessments relative to the ethnicity of a property owner? And this is a question, again, that I thought very hard about how to answer. My immediate response was no. Ethnicity has not, I have not seen anything anyway that would cause me to think that. And by law, the assessors cannot do something like that. We are there to assess the building, the land, the equipment, whatever is on the property. the owner of that property is completely out of the picture. And if that is done, that's something that we could lose our jobs. We could lose, and we could go to jail, I'm sure, probably, with something like that. So is that a concern of mine? No. It hasn't been brought to my attention specifically, race or ethnicity. No one has mentioned that. So no, I do not feel concerned with that at all.
Okay. Any follow-up questions from counselors on anything that we've touched on tonight or anything else? Counselor Forgy.
I want to talk about abatements if I can for a minute. I'd like to know, I know that there are certain abatements that people receive due to age, income abatements, medical status, things of that nature. I'd like to know about, I'm going to call it a common abatement. So when is it appropriate? How do you file one? When is it appropriate to grant one? And do we have any instances in Greenfield where abatements have been more than the actual taxes that have been paid?
Wow. Okay. So the statutory exemptions, I think, is what those are for blind veterans, disabled veterans, the elderly, and the hardship applications. Those I mail out any applications with the exception of the hardship because that's supposed to be a temporary fix. But I mail out all the others the very last minute of June that I possibly can because they're due anytime after July 1st. The due date of those particular exemptions is April 1st. So if you can get it to me before that, great. But if something happens, or if maybe you're new to hearing about it or whatever the case is, and you can't get it in until that date, that's the absolute deadline specifically for those. For the hardship, for the overvals, if you believe that your property is valued too high, different set of abatements, but you have 30 days from the date of mailing to file this application. Now, I think me as well as many other assessors like to try to get their bills out early just because A, you can go relax on your vacation over the holidays, and B, because then people have that little bit of an extra time to maybe save up or whatever it is that they need to do. So if you receive your tax bill, say on the 20th of December, cross your fingers because that would be wonderful. But if you receive your tax bill on the 20th of December, you still only have the month of January to file that application. So basically, the state follows the deadline of the absolute last day to mail your tax bills is 31st of December. So you have the entire month of January to file. However, if something goes wrong and your taxes go out late, anyone who would like to file their abatement does have until May 1st to do that. So, that one has a little bit of a moving deadline, whereas the statutory exemption do not. And then to answer your question of the specific amount of the abatements. So the statutory abatements, with the exception of the hardship, all have a specific number attached with them. The veterans has multiple numbers attached with them. There's $400, there's $1,000, there's $1,500, and there is a possibility of a full exemption for a spouse who has lost his or her, or a married couple, one of them passed away due to their service-connected disability or during action. And we do have a few of those. So there has been recently, the state has changed their guidelines a little bit through the Veterans Affairs. And so we do have a few people who have been able to get that exemption. But excluding that, if there's another, for example, if you're getting the $1,000 for a disabled veteran, you're 100% disabled, but you don't have any specially adapted housing, no ramps, nothing. You're married, you're fine. Everything is otherwise in line, but your tax bill doesn't exceed $1,000. You must pay 10% of your tax bill. And we did have a scenario where someone was paying 10% of their tax bill because their condo was just not worth whatever that was in their taxes were less than 1,000. So we had to hang on to that application and wait until the final tax bills were created in order to figure out what 10% of that was, which we would then adjust that abatement based on that. So that the person was paying the 10%.
How about regular property, a commercial piece of property, somebody comes in and says, my building isn't worth this and I want an abatement. Is there a percentage number that's used for that type of abatement? Is it the same for housing as it is for commercial or industrial? And again, and abatements are only for 1 year, right?
So the statutory abatements, yes, they're for 1 year. If someone files an overval and says, regardless, commercial or industrial, residential, whatever the type of property, it could even be a piece of land. We don't see those that often because they're, pretty in line usually with the sale price. But if whatever type of property they come in and they say, my property is worth too much. We come out, we do an inspection. Say we do find that they had maybe less square footage than we had, or maybe we had them having a full second story, but in fact we find out that it's actually only a partial, and maybe even a part of that isn't finished. Maybe they use like a room for storage and they haven't finished that. So we would come back into the computer system and make that adjustment. With commercial properties, same sort of, we would look at it the same way. If it's a storefront, where's their storage? Do we have the right amount of square footage? Is the condition of the property what we have it listed for? Is there a hole in the roof in the back and there's a bucket under it because that's their fix for right now? Or is, whatever the case may be. So we look at them the same, but it all depends on the actual scenario of that property. And there isn't a specific amount of money that is required to be where the 10%, I don't imagine we'd ever abate anything to less than 10% of where it was, or down enough where it would be that significant, unless, for example, a house burnt down and we took it off the record. Or I shouldn't even say a house, just a building in general. But it's very specific to the actual property and what they're asking for. And by that I don't mean like, oh, I'd like you to take $1,000 off my taxes. By that I mean, wouldn't we all, right? By that I mean, someone may come in and say, I think my value is too high because I think you have, me having 4 bathrooms and I only have 3. Someone else may come in and say, I just had an appraisal done because I'm looking to sell my house and the appraisal just comes in a little lower than where I'm at. Someone else may come in and say, I just purchased this business and it hasn't been inspected in, a long time. And I think that it's not up to par like the record says it is. So it sort of depends on the scenario and what we actually find for data.
Thank you once again. You've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Councillor Disorder.
Thank you, Kim. You have been wonderful. I brought to your attention because somebody actually brought to my attention because they were complaining about they had a complaint about something that was the noise from a business that was on a certain property. And I'm bringing this up in public forum so that we'll all know to do this, but I just brought it forward and I thought we didn't have actually business permits from what I could gather on this, on one of them. One property that is on 3 acres of land had 2 businesses, neither one of which had a permit or a site plan review done. And the neighboring properties, which were of a smaller amount of land, are taxed nothing like that. So you know what one of those is, and I'm sure that you'll be addressing that particular one, correct? The Well Street property? Okay. My other question was the other specific one that I brought up to you that we actually through, and this is on Cleveland Street. This, I have a lot of concerns about that. That person was abated on a home more, unless the house burnt down and I didn't know it, more than what the property was worth in 1 year, just an over eval. I'm not talking about, I understand blind tax, elderly hardship. It wasn't that. It was an over eval. That same owner is the one that somehow we missed looking at, although it was a new business where they actually had permits pulled and had work done on the property. Maybe $80,000 or $100,000 worth of work. And that business has been going on since 2014 and the assessment has never changed. And I have talked to you about that personally. But will we be able to go back and get taxes? And could you speak to that one for the benefit of myself and the rest of us?
So unfortunately, once the tax period has passed, we can't go back and collect taxes. It's unfortunate that that has happened because, again, along those lines, when I was speaking of the garage and you don't pull the permits, but your assessment is not accurate and you're affecting the whole town by doing that, this is another one of those scenarios where it's affecting the whole town for something to not be accurate like that. If something is found in the case of, for example, I had recognized that someone didn't get a bill last year for their final tax bills, and I knew that they were supposed to. I found that there was a couple of properties where the value got somehow readjusted in our system. They think when I spoke to Patriot Properties, there was some sort of a bug, which they fixed. But because I found them in a certain time frame, we had, I believe the exact date is June 15th. If we find things before June 15th for that fiscal year, then we can rebuild them. We can bill for whatever it is that, like, if, for example, if we find out that someone has put a massive industrial building on their property and for some reason we didn't know, but the tax bills already went out, I can go out and measure that property and send them a tax bill for that, so long as it's before June 15th. So in the case of this property, unfortunately, I don't know why what happened. It is something that it is something that needs to be addressed. It needs to be fixed. This is not something that, in my eyes, will happen again. The way that this office is run now is fair and equitable. Everyone is assessed the same. Well, you know what I mean by the same. Not everyone obviously isn't going to have the same assessment, but everyone is assessed fairly and equitably. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what color you are, how old you are, what race you are, what sex you are. None of that has anything to do with assessments. And if that has happened in the past, it's not happening anymore. So I think that, if there's something out there that was going on, again, I'm not aware, but I'm very happy to look at these properties and fix them if there needs to be a fix. So again, as for what exactly happened on that particular property, I don't know. And I hate to be bluntly honest about that, but I don't know. And again, it is something that we'll be looking at. I've already spoke to RRG about that. And it is something that will be addressed. And just a little even back up on that is that I've had this conversation with RRG before any of this ever started, that Greenfield is different than other towns and cities. Other towns and cities are okay with certain things that Greenfield is not okay with. And by that, I mean just some smaller towns, specifically, I know Leverett, they don't actually go out to every single property and look at them all the time because they just don't have the staff. However, we don't really have the staff to do exactly what we're supposed to do in a perfect world and do it perfectly. But there is laws that we have to follow, and that is going to be the way it's done, whether or not, however it was done before. Prior people, I'm not just specifically speaking towards one person, I'm speaking just in general. This office is now in totally different hands, and I have expectations and I have a reputation, and I care about the people who live in Greenfield, who work in Greenfield, who own property in Greenfield. And to me, it's very important for everything to be fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mew.
Thank you very
I
much.
really appreciate that and really appreciate all the time you spent to answer our questions this evening. I think all of us counselors and anyone who was here for the meeting is a lot better informed as to the processes that go into assessing. And we know to bring things to your attention, I think, as they come to our attention. We can forward those on. We can have these conversations. But again, thank you really for all your work that you do as assessor. It's so important to the city of Greenfield, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys as well. And just on a quick happy note, I have one more class to take before I'm officially the chief assessor.
Yay! I know. That's great. I knew you were really close. I didn't know how to introduce you at the beginning because you
Right.
still have this title that doesn't quite line up with what you're doing. So.
Yeah, it should be. I should have had it, but because of COVID, everything got canceled. And I actually just found out that I'm lost words. But anyway, the woman who organizes everything has just left because she's realized because of COVID, it's more important to spend time with her family. So the president. So I don't know when this class will be offered, but it's only 15 hours that I need. So
You're so close.
soon. So.
All right. I'm glad to hear it. Well, you enjoy the rest of your evening.
It looks like, I don't know if you can see Counselor Elmer, but he has his.
Oh, yeah, Counselor Elmer, thanks.
I just wanted to thank Councilor Disorder for all the hard work she put into and all the research she's done and the shoe leather reporting. And I wish we all had the stick-to-itness of Ginny Disorder. Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you, Ginny.
And
Yeah,
thank you, Kim.
That's a great point. And on that note, we're actually not finished for the evening, but I do want to absolutely dismiss Ms. Mew so that you may eat dinner or enjoy the rest of your evening as you see fit.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate
And
it.
I just quickly wanted to, off of that, just say, it's not just myself and Ginny, it's all of us. Ginny said earlier to me, we work as a team, and I think so far so good. So thank you.
Thank you again.
You're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Kelly Varner here, the treasurer collector, and there's some questions that have been submitted to her as well. Varner, are you here?
I am here. Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. I know you came on late,
Yeah.
so we appreciate it. I know it's probably been a long day for you already.
It has been.
Yeah, we do have a few questions. Hopefully it'll be some brief. And I think mostly they were submitted to you ahead of time. So, and some of them are gonna, let's see, I'm trying to look at them, so forgive me. Some of them duplicate questions that were already asked earlier this evening.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna hand it to Counselor Disorder Counselor, you submitted, I think, questions. Do you have specific ones for Ms. Varner?
It's okay if I call you Kelly on this, right?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, Ms. Varner.
You can be very informal. You can call me Kelly. It's totally fine.
So thank you. You did a great job answering the questions. And one of the reasons that I asked some of them was after listening to appointments and ordinances also, where there was talk of an ordinance that was perhaps coming forward that had to do with properties that people and some of the individual land the owners of the property weren't paying their taxes, and there were problems with what was happening on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked you what I did because I wondered how we were doing with people that weren't paying. Now, I am not talking about, I just want you to know, it's a pandemic. There are people who are not working. I just wanted to make that very clear. I'm not talking about that. It appears that there's kind of a little repetitive game here, looking at the records with people that they do this all the time.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yes. And so they're going to pay. They actually have that. And we need it. Okay?
Yeah.
Probably maybe more than they do. But it sounds as if we've been a little bit more lenient. You wrote the part about the Massachusetts general law.
Yeah.
But that we could do something so that you were putting in, I don't know, I know that you're charged interest from the day that you don't pay your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
People own multiple properties, don't pay them, and then if you put a lien on, I think there's an extra fee that's associated with it, isn't there?
When we do a taking on a property and we actually are going to put it in tax title, there's fees we charge for when we advertise it in the paper, and then we also have to record it at the Registry of Deeds, which it's a fee. We pay $105 to register each taking. So we charge that back to the person if they pay off their tax title. So there is a fee. God, my cat is like all up in my business right now. Any fees that the town has to incur because of putting a lien on a property, we try and recoup from that person. So it does end up costing them more money, but in a sense, it is their fault that they drag their feet. I think I mentioned to you that, we send the demand notices. I send them a couple letters ahead of time, which we don't have to do. I do it as a courtesy to try and get them to pay before we get to that point. I've contemplated sending a third letter. I don't know if that would help any, because it seems like the only time I really get response out of people is when they know their name's going in the paper and they don't want everybody, to know that they're not paying their taxes. But, we make the best effort we possibly can to try and get people to not get to that point. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, and I think we should do everything that we can for people that are having any kind of difficulty.
And I often point them to Kim too, because there's a lot of people who don't know about abatements and things that they can get to help if they're in a hardship situation or if they're elderly. I mean, it's not something that most people just know or even think to look for. So, I try and point them in her direction. Sometimes there's community outreach programs that will help. I try and get these people to do anything they can to help themselves before we get to the point where we're putting liens on and we're starting the process of going through court with them. Because we don't want to do that. We don't want to take people's houses. It's not, that's not our job. So.
And so follow up. I totally am with you on that. But we have people that own multiple properties. And they're oftentimes landlords, and it's a continued habit of just not paying.
Mm-hmm.
So would another town do anything different? Is there any?
There isn't much you can. The only thing you could, I mean, I don't know if there's any sort of ordinance that the town can put in place so that these landlords don't keep getting more properties. As far as like the law goes, there's nothing else I can do other than trying to start the process quicker. But if I do it quicker for these people, I have to do it, just like Kim said, everybody's treated the same. We do everything fairly. We treat, doesn't matter who you are, it's the same process for everyone. So if we were to speed up the process and try and put these people into tax title quicker, then I would have to do it for the other people who maybe really need the extra time before they, they get to that point.
And what percentage do they have to pay to keep out of tax title? I mean,
so, like this year, your fiscal 19s, we put into tax title this past May. So they would have had to pay whatever balance they had for fiscal 19 in order to avoid being in tax title. So they still would have had fiscal 20 taxes out there. I mean, this is like, we give them an extra year essentially to pay, which, I think I mentioned to you, we don't have to do. We can do it, start the process 2 weeks after we issue that demand notice. But most typically, a lot of towns don't do it that way. They do give a little bit of extra time so that, these people can, whatever happened with them, whether it's COVID or some other situation that they're in, to give them time to catch up. I mean, I can see it being beneficial to start quicker because sometimes if you put people on notice faster, they get it together quicker before their balance gets too high to pay. But, under when Lane was here and, under Mayor Martin, this was how we did it. I'm not opposed to doing it sooner. I don't think it's a matter of, do we wait a year? Now we go from a year to 2 weeks after the demand notice and do it. I don't think we do that, but maybe we start edging it back so that people get less time. Like I said, it just gets them going a little bit faster so that balance doesn't get as high. And it protects the town too, because if we end up with these properties, I don't want them owing, $50,000 for a house that's falling down that we're not going to be able to recoup our money on. And it's not fair to the other taxpayers either, who are now footing the bill for these people who are not paying taxes.
okay.
Councilor 4G.
Hi, Kelly. Do we have a program where if somebody is just having a hard time, they can come to you and set up a payment plan? So they owe 19 taxes, but they can pay 20, say, okay. Is there some, I don't, for lack of a better word, I'm going to use easy payment plan. Can they come to you and say, I can pay you $500 a month for the next 4 months to get this property paid current?
Sure, they absolutely can do that.
Okay.
And a lot of times, like when somebody actually is in tax title, we will set up a payment plan so that the intention is, we do a 3-year payment plan. At the end of that 3 years, you should be paid up. Everything should be current and you're all good. And then you just move forward from there. We have a lot of people that take advantage of that have paid off their tax title. They just stuck with it and they just over time just kept paying it. And, it makes me happy when I see those people that actually, spoke to me and actually, dealt with the situation rather than just kind of sweeping it under the rug. But absolutely, people can make payments, even if it's $50 a week, if that's what you have, anything you can do. I always tell people the more you can pay up front, the less your interest is going to be, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So, even if it's $20 you got, we have a guy that comes in, he brings, I swear it's like change from his couch. And just, over a couple of years, he paid off all his taxes, he's current. And like, I just, I'm so proud of people like him who really like stick with it and actually try, as opposed to people who just kind of ignore the situation. So.
Can I just do a follow-up, please?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about what types of enforcement tools do you have besides tax title? can you lien, other property that this person might have? Can you, okay, if it's a, if this person is housing people with vouchers, can you interfere with the receipt of the voucher to the landlord?
Yes.
So, okay, good.
Yes.
We're getting there. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have done that. I know one of the people I'm sure that Ginny is referring to, Ted Burrell. He gets money from Greenfield, from the housing authority. Once they're in tax title, we have the right to intercept that rent money. So we have been intercepting the rent. You have to apply it towards his tax balances, but at least the town is getting their money back.
Okay.
So yes.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Unfortunately, there's no other property that we can lien. I mean, we have adopted 40U, so we haven't started doing it yet, but like we'll be able to start liening health fines, building fines, I think civil violations, all kinds of different fees we will be able to start attaching to their real estate taxes. So some of these landlords who are that we're having problems with, it may make the process a little easier, a little quicker for us to actually take over the property if it comes to that, just because there's going to be so many increased fees attached to the bill.
Okay, so is there a court, in other words, is a court option? Can you go and say this person's been in tax title on this property for 9 consecutive years?
Mm.
Is there any way you can go to court and say we need an order for this person to pay their taxes? Whether they have to sell the property or come up with the cash or whatever, is there a mechanism for repeat offenders who have multiple year tax titles out there?
Well, there is. It's the same process for everybody. So once they don't pay, you have to give them 6 months after the date of the filing of the taking, before we can start proceeding in land court. We file the petition and we immediately start the action in land court. Unfortunately, it's always up to the judge. Sometimes there's judges that are more lenient, they give more time, some aren't. Or if they see that you're trying to pay, they will give you more time. Unfortunately, the court systems, as you probably all know, are not operating right now. So everything is kind of ground to a halt. But, when things get moving again, they are pretty good about, staying on top of it. This particular person that I keep mentioning, Ted Burrell, I mean, he always seems to come up with the money, and, there's nothing I can do if they pay the taxes. There may be other mechanisms from like the health and building perspective. If there's issues there that they might be able to do something about it, but I deal with the money. If they pay if they pay up their bill, there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. As much as I know some of these people are a problem.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor. Thank you.
Yeah. Ginny's laughing at me.
Any other questions on that? Anything in there that we talked about? I know I've had this discussion with MJ Adams kind of about how aggressive to be. I've had it more around vacant properties, and, around precinct 7. I know that there's been talk about putting properties into receivership potentially if there was something. Is that related to 40U, or is that kind of outside the tax title?
Yeah, that's outside of. I know that's something that Nicole Zapko and Mark Snow were pushing at one point, but I don't totally understand what receivership is, but I know the former mayor was not interested in doing it. But now maybe that's something that they should revisit with Roxanne, because there are a lot of certain neighborhoods have a lot of properties that are probably vacant, and I think when they're in receivership, my understanding, somebody takes it, fixes it up, and then beyond that, I don't know what happens, but
I believe it's either sold, but at that point the property has been improved at least, or the property owner can basically buy their way out of receivership by paying for the improvements. Right. Yeah, it's something as precinct 7, there's a house in my precinct that, was, the property owner passed away in 1989, and it's been vacant ever since. And so I use it as an example of how we might want to be a little bit more aggressive. And that's not it's more like an issue where there was confusion around who the heir was, but I think receivership would have been appropriate for that. So but I'm continuing to have that conversation with other.
Is it on Deerfield Street?
No, it's on Water Street, or
14?
It's on the corner of Meridian. Meridian.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. That one's, that's a problem because it's like, our lawyer showed me the family chart. It's like enormous because it's heirs of heirs of heirs, and everybody has passed away, and you have to serve everybody that could possibly have an interest in the property. They're getting there. We have had citations issued, so we are almost there on that one. But that's one that, by the time we get it, the taxes on it that are going to have been owed, we're never going to get that back.
Right. And it's unfortunate because someone actually got a hold of me and wanted to buy it, and they said, what can you do? Can you, is there anything you can do to forgive any of these taxes? I was like, that property's kind of a lost cause. But
well, when it does, if we end up, I'm assuming we're going to end up with it when it goes to auction. I mean, we always try and recoup our taxes from it, but if we don't, in a case like that, I know we're not going to get our money back. It's better to just sell it and let somebody fix it up. No matter if they give us $10,000 and they owed 40 grand, it's still better to get something for it. So to hold on and look for it at auction.
Get it back on the tax rolls and rehabilitate the neighborhood. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions for Kelly? Councillor Sorger.
And from what I read, you seem to think that what we were taking in this past quarter, ending August 1st, was consistent with the past.
Yep, seems to be. It was almost identical percentage-wise to last year.
Very good, thank
you.
So
it doesn't seem like we're behind on tax collections.
Okay.
Welcome.
All right. Anything else? Anything else from councilors? We also have Director Gilman on the line if there's any questions for her. We don't have any other business on the agenda, so we'll just finish out this conversation, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have a question from Councillor Forgy, but if it's new business, then we'll move on to that. And Kelly, thank you for coming on and answering our questions. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
You too. Councillor Forgy.
Well, I wanted to, since we're Finance Committee and we've actually, Ways and Means, I'm sorry, I get stuck in the old. I wanted to talk a little bit about our special meeting that was called to discuss the fire station and the price tag for that. I wanted any updates that are out there, Council Wheeler, that you may know of that at this point. And I wondered if the other members of the Ways and Means had anything on their mind in regard to, what we were presented with. And it's my curiosity. I'm hoping for a more open discussion.
Let me answer the first part first. We did receive a request to put a $5 order, $5 million order on next week's agenda, an appropriation for the further $5 million. It was received outside of the the 5-day rule that we normally require for agenda items, and at my discretion, it was not placed on the agenda next week. It will go to committee chairs in October, and presumably come to Ways and Means and full council in October. Now, obviously, there's time for the mayor to change the order, or the building committee might come up with something new. But that's the update and the expectation. Beyond that, I had a really good conversation with the fire chief this morning. That I felt like it was positive. I don't have any details to share from it. I'm preparing questions for him and the fire station building committee and the mayor's office and the finance committee, and I would finance department, and I would suggest that the rest of the committee here, also forward any questions that you have, because I think it's going to be a really, really detailed and long meeting probably. If that $5 million order comes before us, we're going to do our due diligence and really cover all the details. Yeah, beyond that, let's have a brief discussion on this. Councillor Elmer, I saw your name.
Yeah, I'll share that I was very disappointed with that meeting. And I had listened to 2 previous meetings of that committee, and we went from a public safety building that included a police station and was all gung-ho, and they had a place chosen. 1 month later, there's no police station till 2030 or later, and the price is nearly doubled. And I've lost confidence in the leadership of that group. And I think the council has some leverage here. And I'm not quite sure how it gets expressed or how this gets resolved, but I'm not going to vote that money until there's some changes. They're not going to get my vote until there's some changes made.
Thank you, Councillor Elmer. I hear where you're coming from. Other councillors wanna weigh in, share your thoughts? Councillor DeSorger?
I'll echo what Councillor Elmer said. I feel that number that's coming out is not. I felt the same way that Councillor Elmer felt leaving the meeting. I want our fire department to be in a great place that fits our needs for the future, and I think that I had a feeling of not confident in the information that I was given. I wasn't confident in the information that I was given previously, certainly, and it would be the same, without getting into too specifics, but the same architect who would be then giving us numbers, which numbers don't change. Numbers are numbers. 2 and 2 are always going to equal 4. And to hear something, and then it wasn't even going to be close. And I thought, I don't think that it's going to be 5 at all. And I take my job very seriously. And had I known any of that when I was voting on capital projects or anything, my votes would have been different. I am someone that's wholeheartedly in favor of both of those projects, and I've been sick about this since Thursday. I don't know the answers, but I know when I trust something and I know when. In my heart of hearts, I don't. And I don't know where we're going to get to the next step. And I think that 5 million isn't even what we're talking about. And I left my questions for you that I would like answered before. And I thought before we ever have any discussion, Councilor Wheeler, about what went down with the other piece. And so we'll leave it at that. When we voted, when we were even here having our budget meetings in April, it was vote like there's not a pandemic. And I think none of us thought that it was going to be like this. None of us thought it was going to be this long, that this was going to keep going on. But the fact of the matter is, we have an obligation to make wise decisions, and our economy is going to be impacted. I asked Kelly to find out what the local receipts were. I'm delighted that they are where they are. But I have two eyes, and I see businesses that aren't open, and I see restaurants that aren't open, and I see who's going in. And I know people who are having trouble, and I know I have to go down and help my son and watch the kids because the parents aren't able to go to work like they normally do because their children aren't in school. And quite truthfully, that could be through the entire next year. And we have an obligation to look at everything. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor DeSorger. And I share a lot of your concerns. I think that examine the $10 million order as closely as we should have, partly because it was only for $10 million, which was frankly less than certainly I thought or expected it to be. And it was in the middle of capital season when we were meeting every week and talking about enormous amounts of information and budget line numbers. Now we have about a month to prepare as many questions as we want, and do our due diligence here. The chief did assure me that if the council appropriates $15 million total for the fire station, they will build a $15 million station, meaning that they would not come back to ask for funds for any overages. They would cut space. And that should be something that he should speak to, and the OPM and the mayor should speak to. But I do think that we absolutely need to require that and make clear that there will be no coming back for more money after there's a further appropriation. That would be my intention. But okay, we have more questions. Councillor Forgy.
Thank you. I've been trying to wrap my head around the money piece. And I think Liz did a really good job the other evening explaining to us debt exclusion and inside the debt. One of the things I've been thinking about is if we talk about this project by removing COVID, the whole COVID piece out of the landscape here and just look at money, my question would be to Liz, actually, with or without COVID, we would still have the same numbers as far as our debt is concerned. Is that correct to Liz? Is she muted? She's muted.
I'm trying. My click wasn't working. So yes, the debt is the debt. You know, once you sign the dotted line, that's your debt payments. There is the difference, and I'll put it across again. I've been thinking about how I will present this at a future meeting, but there is the difference between a debt exclusion, and that's what everyone keeps getting their mind around, and it's not a debt exclusion. A debt exclusion is voted, it gets added to your tax rate, basically happens just about the year after your vote or fairly soon, and it is specific impact on the taxes because it's outside 2.5. Whereas debt that's inside the debt or inside the operating budget, that is supported by three things, as all operating budgets are: local receipts, property taxes, and state aid. So fluctuations in any of those can impact your tax rate, you know, because all three support the operating budget. So it's coming. I really think as counselors, you just need to look at the debt schedules, and I know they're awful to look at, but honestly, you need to feel comfortable with what you see as the dollar amount of debt coming on and off. You know, that's the best way I can put it, because as you raise the point, regardless of whether there's COVID or not, that will be the debt service. So are you comfortable with that? And it's presented to you at 15 million. And that's where we were at the time. I mean, where we'll be in a month from now, it could be different, you know? So we'll see where we go from there. And I know the chief and the committee are working hard on trying to reduce the cost. The mayor is certainly trying to go after grants, but you know, whereas it's a little different, I know when you voted on the library, there was a grant in hand, and that makes you feel better. Or when you do a school project, you know MSBA has approved that. And yes, it would make us all more comfortable if we knew that ahead of time. But on the other hand, we're dealing with the situation we're in. So, you know, we have to put our heads together and say, okay, what's the best solution to this? And, you know, honestly, I believe not only is it the two building committees working together, it's also us, you know, brainstorming and coming up with some ideas. And, you know, I know it's not an easy decision, and I know this is a lot of numbers, and the other thing is, who can predict what is going to be in 2024 and 2025? No one. And as I said, all kinds of factors impact the tax rate, whether it's the local receipts or state aid, and it could be higher. You know, I'm not just doing it could be higher. So I honestly say it goes back to, let's maintain our policy, the city's policy of 8 to 10% of the operating debt, in conjunction with you feeling comfortable with the amount of the debt going up and down. And I can go over those sheets with you. That's why I knew how important they were, and I know it's awful to look at, but there are certain columns that I wanted to draw your attention to that would maybe help you with looking at this.
And Councilor Borgi, yeah.
That's one piece I've been trying to wrap my head around. And so even if this project was going on without a library in the picture or without the COVID, the numbers and the debt service are basically something we always have to deal with, whatever the cost of the project is, we have to do this. I'm going to echo my colleagues. They're looking for, I don't even know if I can describe what they're looking for, a level of reassurance that what we are being told is in fact correct. That is really everything in a nutshell. I don't know how, I don't have it within my scope of brain power here to figure out what that solution looks like. But I do know that at this point, there's a lot of feeling that, and I'm going to make a distinction between feeling something and thinking something, because they're two different things, but they're very much a part of each other. It's very emotional for everybody right now, emotional for taxpayers, for council members. There needs to be some tangible, I can put my hand on this and show you, this is what we started out with. This is where we went. This is what has happened. I think people are looking for an evidence chain is what they're looking for, as to, I know we don't want to go backwards, but we want to be reassured that due diligence is being done, and we just can't take a person's word for it. We need to see the evidence for it, whatever that is. And again, I don't have the answer to any of that. So my two pieces are going, one, to the money issue, second, to the trust issue, to being able to feel comfortable with how credible the information is, because that relationship is off track right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor 4G. And thank you for all of that, because it jibes with where I'm coming from, and it informs my role as chair to get this committee to a place where it feels comfortable making a recommendation. It informs the type of questions that we should ask in order to get us to that place where we do feel comfortable. There's programming that, and by programming I mean there are layouts and designs and plans that were part of the previous $50,000 appropriation for a public safety study. Those, from what I know in talking to Chief Strand, those would be applied, obviously without the public safety piece, to the potential location on Coombs. So I'll be asking for the chief to go over some of that in detail, and preferably with some PowerPoint slides on the screen. I also realized I should have noted that the way things stand now, the council will need to do a first reading before ultimately voting. So unless a special meeting were called, the first reading would happen in October and the vote would actually happen in November. That said, the mayor or President Stempel or 5 councilors are qualified to call a special meeting. So if there were time constraints that would affect the anything around the temporary or permanent station, then certainly we could get to it sooner. My feeling as a counselor is I don't want to rush this. I want all our questions to be answered, which brings me to the fact that a couple of you have questions. Councilor Elmer and then Councilor Bottomley.
A quick one, Director Gilman. Liz, Councilor 4G asked you if you had an estimate of what how much our taxes would go up with the numbers that we were shown at the meeting. Have you had a chance to do that yet?
So that's sort of what I was talking about before. It's with, and I need to go through this, and it probably will take a couple presentations. It's not a debt exclusion. So it has to stay within the constraints of 2.5. So it's a percent of the operating budget, and 3 different categories support the operating budget. So it really isn't a one-to-one. I think I'm still going to do a presentation for you for if it were a debt exclusion, you know, but it really is not a debt exclusion. And I'm trying to think of the best way, but you want to know something, it's really hard for me if I don't have the definitive number that I'm working with. And so that's kind of where the focus I think needs to be is, and especially with your comfort level, is what is the number, what has been done to verify the number? You know, have you touched base with other projects as well, or, and what are options? What are some options? If there are options, you know, in building. So that I feel that is the starting point.
If I could just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's a pretty simple question. It's the one that the taxpayers are asking. If we build the library and we build the fire station that costs $15 million, how much more do my taxes go up? And if you can't answer it, because the taxes come from different places, I hear you. If there is a simple number that the taxpayers can be given, I guess it's a yes or no question. Is there such a thing as a simple number?
And again, if you're talking about in 2025, when it hits the debt gets bonded and it hits the debt. And so it isn't, that's my point is it's not a simple question. That's why I said you need to look at it as a percent of the operating budget and then look at those schedules I gave you to see what it goes up and down. So in other words, when you vote a budget, you vote priorities. So to stay within the constraints of 2.5, maybe you're not funding something else. So, you know, most taxpayers can assume for everywhere I've lived is that your property taxes will go up 2.5%. And so it isn't, I'm saying is it's not a one-to-one relationship like it is with a debt exclusion, where it's very, very specific with a debt exclusion.
Okay, thank you.
And I will go over it again, and I'll try and think of the best way to get to that point with people. Sometimes even in talking maybe individually with you, I can go back and forth and speak to, try and pull out what exactly you're looking for, you know, by explaining things. And I know it's not easy, you know. I had a conversation too with the recorder, and just that was my point, was it's not a debt exclusion, you know, and we have a policy to stay within 8 to 10% of our operating budget. Our operating budget, the tax levy has to stay within 2.5, the proposition 2.5. And I mean, it's true, it does. And our levy ceiling, by the way, too. So, you know, there's a lot involved to it. And I guess you want to know something, this actually is a good precursor to our budget hearings, because you'll get a better understanding of the debt aspect of the budget, I feel anyway. So
is the short answer that the taxes won't go up more than 2.5%?
To some extent, yes, because they can only go up 2.5% with excess levy capacity.
Okay.
So
Thank
that's
you.
another conversation.
All right.
All right.
No, enough.
Director Gilman, and I'm gonna interrupt here, because I think sometimes you're in your department, and sometimes you know too much to be able to answer
I
a
know.
question with the simplicity that I think Counselor Elmer might be looking for. Counselor Elmer, I had people asking me really detailed questions when the library was up on the ballot. So I calculated what it would add to a specific property owner's tax rate, what it would add to the rate for the city, their yearly bill, their monthly bill. We can do that. Obviously, it's an estimate. And like I tried to emphasize, some debt is falling off and this is replacing other debt. But, for the library, I came up with that it would add 38 cents to the tax rate. And for the average home, it would probably equate to a monthly amount of $7. But, that's my estimate. I'm not in the
No,
finance
but
department.
that's a debt exclusion. That's a debt exclusion approach. It really is.
Right.
And so that you're assuming it adds, when in reality, what it is a piece of the
I know.
operating budget.
Yes. I try to explain that because it's important to explain it, but I think that that's the answer that people
Well,
tend to want.
that's what I said I would do. I said I would do it as a debt exclusion, but that's really not the concept.
Yeah, no, it's complicated. Counselor Bottomley.
Yeah, I'd like to go back a little bit to what Counselor Forgy said, that I think it's important that we have to have some faith in the process. Things have to play out in a certain way, in a way that they didn't play out this time, and that I have faith in the fire station building committee. But obviously, I think we would feel better if we knew that committee had completely vetted every decision. We were not able to watch those meetings because those were not videotaped. There was no way to find out any information despite multiple requests about updates of anything that was going on with the committee. And so from our perspective, it looked like 8 months went by and we ended up back in the same spot we were 2 years ago. And I don't have a good sense, obviously, from watching some of that committee meetings, that the committee knew what was going on. Too much was done behind closed doors. So that doesn't inspire confidence on my end when we're talking about making huge financial decisions that impact every citizen in this town. So I would like the committee to be able to do their job, and that we can see them doing their job, because there's some really intelligent, wonderful people on that committee, and I trust them. But I would like to see that they have fully vetted and examined every aspect of that before they bring it to us. That's just my point, to have some confidence.
Thank you, Counselor Bottomley. I absolutely hear all of that. I've requested that GCTV cover the fire station building committee meetings, and they've essentially said that they will air them if the city forwards the recordings. So that is something that we could try to work with the mayor's office on, because GCTV will broadcast those if we can just get the archives. WebEx records automatically, but they're not saved. I don't know. They are saved for 12 hours or something. I'm not quite sure. But I got a thumbs up from Director Letourneau, so maybe we can move on that issue. And then, as far as the committee goes, I share your concerns. I do think that since the library building committee has started communicating with the fire station building committee, that has addressed a lot of the problems.
What a good idea.
Some of the problems were that the two committees were operating independently over the summer, to a degree that might have just kind of caused us to lose some time. I do think we're in a better place here, but that transparency is key. Anybody else have comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I think that'll conclude things for tonight. But expect as a committee to have a robust and lengthy meeting in October, and send the clerk's office any questions that you would like the well, really anyone to answer before then.
Otis, I think Ginny had a question.
Yeah, Councilor DeSorger.
This would be two things. What we didn't say the other night when we were having our meeting, I regretted, and that was all of this talk. And I thought the last time we were talking about a building, a public building, a library, okay? And before that, we were talking about a public building, a senior center. I said, those firemen were all listening on the line the other night when we were having those comments. And I just want to say this out loud. I care that they're in a good place, that we're making an adequate place for them. And I think all we do on this is talk about the numbers. And I forgot to say that, so I wanted to say it out loud tonight. Secondly, for Director Gilman, when we're doing this, or Councilor Elmer, and Vice President Wheeler, when we're talking about how many cents it is on the dollar or whatever, I just like to give you an overview that I have lived here for only 9 years and my taxes have increased 25%. And we have a senior population, okay, which is going to be up to 30%. They're all things that we need to think about. And whatever, I get this. I understand what makes up what I understood your charts before, and built into that is a lot of other numbers that we see going up. And I think we are going to be very near our debt ceiling. And at this point, they're talking about 5 million, which I already know isn't so. So, but it isn't just about numbers. It's about those firemen and women, if we ever get some fire women. So wanted to say that, but I think that we have a big responsibility here, and someone was saying we have to plan for our budgets, and I thought we did. We planned for our budgets with misinformation. We planned a whole year, and that's not anybody in this room's. That's not on anybody. Not one person that's on this call has anything to do with that. But I am just having a really hard time with that, because why am I going to trust the next one? So I'm going to try to go forward with an open mind and listen. But you know what? The thing about me, I always tell the truth, or almost always. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody tells the truth all the time. But I thought, if I tell you I'm going to vote for something, I'm going to vote for something. If I tell you I'm going to back you for something, I'm going to back you for something. And I think each one of you on this right now, looking at this, you know that about me. Okay? And I don't know that about this anymore. And I thought, there's a lot of people who are having trouble putting food on the table. And that's up to me. And I get that it's 2025. That wasn't lost on me. I know when it hits. I get how the charts go. But there's a lot more to it than that. I go to the senior center more. The people are there getting their boxes of food, okay? And I do the senior tax work often and see a lot of other people that are doing the same thing. So it isn't about 87 cents or this or the other. It's it's like, you know, we got a plan to make, and I want it all to happen, but I took an oath, and I'm gonna stick by that. I'm gonna try to represent the people. I'll give honest answers, but that's what I needed. That's what I needed, and I didn't get. I'm done. But I really care about and love our firemen. Over and out.
Thank you, Councilor Disorder. I hear you. And we do too. And we're going to do our due diligence on this one. We're not going to let anything fall through the cracks. If we make an appropriation, the city will be held to it. There won't be any coming back to the till over and over again. I think we're making that clear. So we just gotta figure out how to move forward. And we'll get there. It's been a long night, but thanks for getting through all this. It's been a productive meeting, an important meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled right now for Tuesday, October 20th, 5:30 p.m. Via WebEx. I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Elmer.
Second, 4G.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. This meeting is adjourned at 8:21 p.m.